Welcome to the Financing Simplified Podcast with Anthony Venuto. If you're looking for answers to your financial questions, let Anthony and his network of friends and associates answer regular questions that regular people have about their money. Thanks for tuning in. It's time to start simplifying your finances.
Once again, welcome back to the Financing Simplified Podcast, where we're here to bring you new and exciting content for 2024, help you simplify the process, especially when it comes to mortgages and real estate transactions. But today, I would like to welcome a special guest. We have Eduardo with Remax West. And Eduardo, tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself to our viewers. Let us know your backstory.
Absolutely. So I'm Eduardo Ramon from Remax West. I've been a realtor for about almost 10 years. It's the dream job. Love it. It's my passion. Makes me love waking up every day. Backstory. You know what? I grew up in the Jane and Finch area. And the reason that's a big part of just, I feel like that really molded a lot of the foundation of my character. Things like loyalty, being hardworking, being from that blue collar community. Really taught me a lot and really shaped the way, just the way I view life now. Coach soccer. I have my soccer club, Colo Colo, 2 beautiful daughters, married. And now I'm part of a great brokerage, Remax West. I've been there about 8 years, and yeah, man, life is good.
Well, it sounds like it. You're blessed, coaching soccer, daughters, working the dream job. I guess we can't ask for anything more in life, right?
Hey, you know what? You got to be grateful, man. Makes being happy a lot easier and simpler.
I feel like a lot of times we are always look at the other side of the equation or the other side of the grass. It's greener, but sometimes it's not, and we should just be thankful for what we have. And speaking of that, like obviously over the last 10 years, you've seen a lot. Obviously, you worked with a lot of people. Tell us, how the last couple years have been. Through the pandemic, through these changes as we navigate these waters together. It's always nice to have different perspectives on the show, right? To see exactly like you mentioned, you grew up in Jane and Finch, and how did that help shape your persona right now? Like, what were some of the things that stand out to you that make you Eduardo?
Just being resilient. I know you mentioned the last couple of years, and I know most of the people in the industry know it's been an absolute roller coaster, right? From just dealing with the simple fact that everyone thought the world was going to end, and then facing that, yet still, keeping your senses in perspective. And for myself personally, I was in a unique situation because I had 2 deals that just firmed up the Friday before the world shut down, and they had sold, and they were 2 families that were that I grew very fond of, and they had kids, and it was like, we sold. Now where do we go? How are we going to get a place? And at the height of it all, I was doing showings, masked up, gloves, suited up, you name it. And it was surreal, right? Like, we were going into strangers' houses, and like my clients didn't want to do the virtual thing. Also, like, you can't blame them. You're about to spend $1 million plus, and you want to see what you're buying. So through that, I remember like just going through those specific 2 transactions because it was so fresh. Really gave me the the resiliency to be like, you know what, hey, whether or not the world is ending, I'm gonna hustle and I'm gonna keep working. And COVID turned out to be one of the best years I've ever had, and since then it's been good. And I think most people over the last maybe 6 months or so have also felt the little bit of the dip in the roller coaster. But with the experience, like this thing ebbs and flows, and there's peaks and valleys. You just have to stay consistent. Keep prospecting, keep hustling, keep doing what you have to do, and you'll be all right.
No, it's crazy that you say that, because I remember when that all went down. We had just come back from holiday in 2020 in March, and then literally like 5 days later, the world shut down.
Yeah.
And I was just talking with on the previous episode, we were talking about, I almost thought for a second there that I had to have a career change, right? And it was like, it could have been farther from the truth. And I think if we can persevere, and there's a lot of, the reason why it's important to sort of reflect back on this time frame is because it does help shape people and understand like how important it is to persevere. Like, I feel bad for a lot of agents that maybe just got into the industry even now, because of the fact that everybody got into the market or sort of wanted to become a real estate agent prior to that. Then that sort of happened. Everybody sort of shut down. Then people got into the market and if they don't have their bones built, like you've been in the industry 10 years, you have your clientele bases and it's tough. It's tough. Imagine trying to make a living today without having your clientele. So tell us, I know you do social media and stuff like that. Like how does that, for anyone listening, like maybe young realtors or aspiring realtors, even mortgage brokers, how important is social media to you?
I mean, it's crucial. I know everyone has their own style, their own way of doing things. For me personally, it's been more than anything. I've always kind of stayed in my own lane. I've refrained from, buying into the copy and paste stuff just because I personally don't like when I go on a realtor's page and you see it's the same thing, copy and paste over. I find it boring. So for my own page, I just try to, give people a glimpse into my life, into my world. So when you do work with me and if you do come across my social media, you're like, oh, you really see what I'm about. You see who I am. You see what's important to me, where I spend my time. So for me, it's been imperative, and it wasn't on purpose, but it just so happened to become like probably 80% of my clientele comes from that, right? So, and then the rest is just doing the traditional stuff, prospecting, being out in the community. I do a lot of fundraising stuff. I'm very active in my kids' school community. So doing things like that it's happened organically just because I love doing it. And I mean, being able to build a clientele as a byproduct of that has been a blessing.
Absolutely. I think you hit something right on the head. I think organic business, people that come to know who you are and trust you, that's the best way that you're going to earn business, because it's tough to have a social media presence. I think it's like somebody said to me when I got into this industry back in 11, 12, you needed to be a movie star or an Instagram celebrity or, a YouTube personality. I probably maybe would have thought a little bit differently about it, but it is something that helps you get out into the marketplace. And the one thing that I found, that just to tie into what you're saying, is people with the social media, with the real estate, I think it's a lot to do with like your credibility, your professionalism, right? Back in the day, like I know a lot of people would write a book, right? You publish, information. Now it's like, if you're not on social media, you're not relevant. Or how do people find you, right? Or how do people come across you? And you're right. There's a lot of like, especially because we're in the industry, you must have a ton of realtors on your social media feed, maybe a ton of mortgage brokers and lawyers and whatever. And you're looking through it and it's like, yep, I got the market rate update. I've seen that 17 times. Yeah. Right? Like how many times can you possibly see that? And I think changing it up, being fresh, and obviously, like conveying these messages. So let's get into some of the conversation, especially around real estate, because I think that's what a lot of the viewers want to know. Is they want to get a feel for you. They want to get a feel for us. They want to feel what's happening in the industry. And I mean, as we kick off 2024, it's hard to say, hey, what's the crystal ball going to tell us? Because I'll tell you right now,
buy now, sell now. The interest rates are going down.
and you know what? As I said, that's the same sentiment that I hear. And I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute here. And then this is the conversation, because if interest rates drop, we know the correlation between lower interest rates and home prices. But I think we're dealing with a specific situation right now where in the Canadian economy, there's a big fear of a recession coming. We have unemployment ticking up. We have more immigration coming into the country. We also have the fear that, they're not creating enough jobs. And does the government have us where they want us? Does the Bank of Canada have the consumers where they want us right now, where we're fearful about making that decision? Because I want to preface that by saying this. Remember back in 2020 when Governor of the Bank of Canada came out and says, rest assured, if you're going to make a big purchase, we're here to back you up. Interest rates are going to stay lower for longer. And then all of a sudden things change. So like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, how do those sentiments, change your client's basis and sentiment?
I mean, it plays a massive, massive role. And I mean, even not that I've been doing it forever, but from when I started, I don't remember my client base talking about, or the media really playing such a significant role on people's opinions on housing. And I really found that lately over the last few years, it is massive, and it's continuous, and it's a bombardment of it where it's like, this is the headline, this is the headline, this is the headline. And my clients come to me, and more often than not, you end up having to educate them like, no, actually, this means this, not necessarily that. don't believe the hot takes. It's the headline, but read more into it. So I think it's unfortunate, but it's true. I do think it plays a massive role in kind of shifting public opinion. It definitely plays a big role, and that's why it's imperative that as realtors or people in the mortgage brokers and people in the industry that we stay on top of everything and make sure we're doing our research and being able to read the market trends, read the historical trends, so you can. Again, no one has a crystal ball. I don't think a lot of people saw this coming because, like you said, the Bank of Canada was priming everybody to say, hey, borrow money, it's cheap. Everybody was pulling the equity out. Everybody was getting rentals done. Everybody was getting second, third properties. And now it's like, hey, now it's time for the cows to come home and you got to pay up, right? And not a lot of people foresaw that coming. So, again, it's imperative that people, listen to your experts, for the experts to actually know what they're talking about, too, because there's a lot of people who act like they know and unfortunately don't put the work in to actually do their research.
It's a full-time job to actually siphon through all this data. Like, I mean, I'm there and my wife's like, it's 2:00 in the morning. What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm, reading up and listening to different opinions and different perspectives on not only the housing market, the stock market, because there's so many things that are correlated. And you're right. When you think about who we define as experts, like to some, it may be I'm an expert. To your clients, you're the expert, right? But when you're looking online, there's a lot of these economists, and we were talking about this with Stefano off camera earlier. Where they get this data, how do they manipulate this data or torture the data is very important for people to understand. As you said, don't just read the headline, read the context within the article, dissect that information. But it's harder nowadays, I think, for clients because we'll try to do like these podcasts where we're, trying to break things down, simplify them. I do our YouTube channel. And still, I think the financial literacy is important. It's an important part of that education journey where you're saying to your clients, this means this means that. Don't get fooled by this, listen to that, because there's a lot of fluff in the industry. There's so much fluff. Yeah. And if you can break through all that and say, look, at the end of the day, I've always been a firm believer. The housing market, minus the last couple of years, it was people that just needed to buy a house, right? It was like, okay, we're at that point in our life where it's like, okay, I want to, but then, interest rates dropped and people got into the housing market prematurely. Like, well, we were thinking about buying a house in the next couple of years, but if we don't get in now, we're scared that we're never going to get in. And how does all this work out? Like I was saying, and I always say this, and I want to get your thoughts on this. What do you think would happen if CBC News came out tomorrow and said, hey, home buyers, now's the time to buy? What do you think would happen?
Chaos. Everyone, and my phone would be ringing off the hook. Because it just carries so much weight,
right? But if someone like in our industry, no, we're just the salespeople, right? Like that's the way the perception is. But we're saying, look, if you can afford to buy, and you're qualified, and you have job security, why are you not buying? Why? What's holding you back? And there's so many different conversations that we've been having with potential clients, trying to explain to them, say, hey, you know what? This is an opportunity. This might be the opportunity. I was watching, social media is great. And there's a lot of content that you have to be very careful when we're watching social media because there's some that's Americanized. And it's two different, even though, as I said, we're talking about housing, two different economies, right? Yeah. But, they're talking about, the same situation, buy now, refinance later. Because I always say to clients, when you looking at the real estate market, you marry the price of the home, but you date the rate. Yeah. Because every 1 to 3 to 5 years here in Canada, we renew mortgages. Not like in the US, that's 30 years. And that's a big topic. Like when you're working with your clients, like what do you find some of the biggest hurdles like in their journey? Like, is it the financing? Is it finding the property? Is it the partners, the husband and wife, the conversation? What do you find being one of the biggest challenges when you're working with maybe first-time home buyers?
I think a lot of it is the financing. I know for myself, I keep it real with my clients. Like a lot of times, they might want the dream home, and then because my biggest fear as a realtor is I don't want anyone coming back to me in 5 years and be like, Eddie, you put me in a tough spot because you weren't honest with me. So I'm always, hey, make sure whatever whatever your situation is, and everyone's unique. You know, some people are a little bit more fortunate than others. Other people are scraping by, scratching together. The bare minimum to be able to purchase and get into the market, work within your reality, right? Because it's too often I see people try to keep up with the Joneses, but my buddy got this for this. But yeah, now your buddy, when it's time to pay back that loan, or the rate changes from 1 point something to now 6.5, 5.5, whatever it is, your buddy's going to be in a tough spot, right? So I think it's imperative that we educate our clients, and that's what I try to do is just work within your reality. Be honest with yourself also, right? Like a lot of times I find that people don't take their lifestyle into consideration. Hey, you travel 3, 4, 5 times a year. You go out every weekend for dinners.
What's important, right? What's important? Is the house more important than your lifestyle? Because to some people, maybe their house is, they don't want to travel. They don't like to travel. I mean, who doesn't like to travel? But at the end of the day, some people prioritize different things in their life.
And that's exactly it, right? So I just try to ask them to like be honest with themselves. I'm like, okay, like if that's something you're willing to compromise, then hey, let's go for that home run. You can do it. But you got to be honest with yourself and understand what it's going to take.
But how do you guys both navigate people coming to you with these false premises? Because social media can skew the reality. So if they come to you with an impossible request, do you give them the very big wake-up call and say, look, what you're seeing is not necessarily what it is? Do you go through that?
A million times. A lot of times it's a process, right? You start the journey and we're like, okay, this you want this? I'll show you what it's going to take to get that. And then slowly people start to come to grips with reality. But again, it is a journey, right? And it's a process where, like, again, I don't like to just say no. I'm like, yeah, you know what? We'll try. Okay, it's going to take A, B, and C. You're going to have to do X, Y, and Z for the next little while, and you'll get there. Then some people do. Some people after then they're like, okay, actually, you know what? Instead of, the 3,000 square foot home, we're going to, let's compromise. Maybe something 2,000 square foot in a different area, with a decent sized backyard will do kind of.
But how do you bring them to that reality if they're hell-bent on social media tells me I can afford this, I can do this? Why are you now telling me otherwise?
Social media is full of shit. Some of the time. Okay?
Right.
Like this is the thing. It's click. It's bait. I want to be a realist. That's what I am with my clients. I'm like, you're a dreamer. Like at this point, like you have to look at the income. You have to look at your financial situation. Like you touched on earlier, Eduardo. Some people are more blessed than others. Some people have bank of mom and dad. Some people have a hefty down payment. You know what? Some of them, maybe they bought the home 10, 15 years ago and they have that equity to put down. Yeah. The one thing that we got through the pandemic and the one thing that like not broke my heart, but clients would ask me, it's like, I have to put a condition of financing in my offer because of their financial situation. Obviously, it's at their own risk if they decide to do that. And we all went through what that felt like. And any of our viewers out there that maybe not familiar, you're getting in the market for the first time. There was a time where you could not put a condition of home inspection, lawyer review, financing condition. You had to buy pretty much sight unseen. So clients are coming up to you saying, Anth, how are these other people doing? Like, how am I competing against people? Why can they go firm and I can't? And I'm like, well, what are their circumstances? Like maybe they're putting $1 million down on a $1.5 million house. Maybe they sold their house. Maybe their parents are giving them $600,000. They only need a $300,000 mortgage. Like everybody's looking at the other end. And this comes back down to social media, back to your point, Stefano. When we look at social media, it's almost one of those things that we love. I love to hate. I'm going to be honest. I would love.
At least you keep it real, man.
I love to hate it. Like, I would love to get rid of social media, like because it just gives me anxiety to the point where it's like you're looking. It's like I got to do this and I got to do that, and oh my god, look what they're doing, and I'm not doing that, and I'm like, you know what? Is it like focus on your business, like you were saying. Don't necessarily look at everything else. Don't look at what other people are doing to base what you should be doing.
But and where are you getting your information from?
Me?
Yeah. Be honest.
My information comes from YouTube, from articles, from studies, from analytical reviews, the Bank of Canada, CMHC.
So would you say 25% of your research is essentially coming from social media?
No, I don't use social media clickbait little 30-second reels to be like, oh, this is a new trend. I'm like, I'm watching it. I'll say, okay, that sounds interesting, but back to the archives. Let's go back and look at what this person.
But see, that's a skill you have though.
Because a lot of people can't do that.
They don't, and they don't have the patience.
That's right.
They'll be like, hey, the 30 seconds, fuck reading a book, right? Like 30 seconds.
They're
I'll get
giving
everything
the
in.
whole book and giving it to you in 30 seconds. So how do you compete with something that gives you the answer immediately?
Well, that's not the answer. That's the problem. It's not the answer. You have to understand, to condense something so complicated in a minute, it's impossible. You're omitting something. Something's missing from the data. And guys, the way I say it today, there's no excuse for ignorance. And as I said, there's people that just are not financially literate, and that's fine. I mean, but do your homework. We have a thing called, I don't know if many people have heard about it, but this thing called ChatGTP. You can take an article, right? You can take an article that maybe you don't understand, something that's interesting, and you can take that article and copy and paste it into ChatGTP and say, summarize it, simplify it. It's literally a great tool, and it can help you digest more data, more information quickly. Like if you're listening to something, like for example, I'll tell you, we're busy. I have to digest a lot of data. Like you're saying, clients are asking us questions. What's happening with the Bank of Canada? What's happening with the banks? CMHC, OSFI, all these things that are happening. It's like, how do you stay on top of it? Well, I have the Globe and Mail. It has a feature that it reads the article to you. So I could be doing multiple things, listening to data, audiobooks. Like there's so much information.
Okay, so that's for a mortgage broker. Now, for you, where would you find reliable sourced information when you're starting to research the conditions of the market?
They go hand in hand though. It's very similar, right? Like you got to put in the time, read the articles. I still I'll sit there and go through it and then read it. And you do that, summarize it, digest it, and then you see how it's relevant to your market, right? Because a lot of times too, you have to be wary where a lot of stats will take the Canadian housing market, but the GTA is a very unique market compared to the rest of Canada. You can't compare the GTA to Saskatchewan or Regina or Winnipeg, whatever it is. So you have to really, and a lot of times take those statistics, analyze it, break it down, localize it, and then you're literally filtering through a lot of garbage to find out the statistics and the information that's relevant to you and your market and your clients. Right. Yeah. But it's there's no easy way around it. You have to put in the time. You can't.
Yeah, and you're in the real estate industry. It's all statistical data. Like you're looking at previous year sales, year over year sales, listings, new listing. It's a different ballgame than the mortgage industry. But as I said, we're correlated because I feel and I always stay in my lane. Remember, you were saying that, stay in your lane. Know what you know, do what you do best, delegate the rest, or refer the rest. If somebody comes to me with a real estate question, Ant, what do you think this house is worth? And I'm like, I have no idea. That's not my cup of tea. I can give you an estimate, but I could be way off. Maybe you should talk to a real estate professional. But this is a person to person business.
Yeah, and it's ever changing, right? Like things that were relevant last year, like you said it, when we went through the period where if you had a condition in your offer, you were at a real disadvantage competing against 19, 20 other offers, right? So I know for myself, it was like, okay, how do we navigate around that? You know what? Maybe we use one of the showings as an inspection. You know what? Take as many precautions on getting your finances straight before we put an offer in, right?
In that time, did you tell your clients, look, before we even go look at anything, have everything ready so in case we do want to make an offer, we are ready?
Always, because it was moving so fast.
What about now?
Now it's kind of a little bit more of a traditional market where, you know what, you can negotiate again.
You can have a condition of finance.
You can have conditions in it
on some properties. I still find some things are moving and changing the mindset of the sellers. Still, is you let us know. What do you think? I've gone through it many times. It's as much as anybody sitting at the other end of it, I always tell my clients, I'm like, you need to put a condition of finance in because it's protecting your interest. Yeah. Remember, like I said, I want you to go in firm, but you don't have the prerequisites to make a firm case. God forbid something happens, you have no fallback. There's nothing there. So you're literally just rolling the dice and hoping for the best. But this person sitting at the other end, if you're watching this and saying, hey, what's sort of happening on the other end of that equation? It's like, if I have even two offers in front of me, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but let's say one's firm at $5,000 or $10,000 less, but one is, with a condition of financing for $10,000 more, in my opinion, I take the firm offer. What do you think would happen?
You do, right? Like more often than not, just because for the seller, from the seller's perspective, it's a firm offer. You don't have to technically, because again, we all know things can happen, but technically it's a done deal, right? You don't have to spend the 5 days waiting in limbo whether or not these guys are going to firm up. So you have a done deal in front of you.
It's almost a no-brainer. And back to your point was thinking about it from the perspective, like when we were going through this whole process, right? And I'm thinking to myself, how do we best prepare our clients for offer night, right? Because that was huge, right?
Yeah.
Offer night. So clients, we tell them, if you're going into an offer night presentation, well, how do you best take advantage of the situation? So I was telling my clients, I said, look, you guys really eagerly want to pursue this home. Yes. Okay. How much are you willing to spend? Okay. Well, like you said, use one of the showings, talk to the realtor, get a home inspection done prior to, pay the $400, whatever it is to get it done. To some of our clients, we were even telling them, get an appraisal done. Let's get an appraisal done on the property. If it's better for you to know that your home's going to appraise, go into that offer armed with that information. Now, some clients are like, I don't want to spend that extra money. I'm like, look, if you're going to go guns ho for this property, and you're telling me that this is the one, why not? What are you worried about? I said that you're spending over $1 million. What's a couple $100 at this point? If you're about to bid on a property to X amount, at least when we go to the bank, you're buying it for this price. This is what the appraisal says. There's your stop loss. You know that you can go up to this property price and
you work within that. And that's what we would try to do a lot, right? Is know what your best shot is. If you really want it, take your best shot, and then you have no regrets after.
No.
You were well prepped. You did what you could, and then you don't overextend yourself and put yourself in a tough situation, right?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of our clients we ended up being in a position where we were able to help our clients because they're like, okay, I wasn't going to offer that much, but I know the appraisal's worth that much. I can afford that much. So why not go in at that much? Or know what you're going to go in at. I'm not telling people what to do. We always told our clients, get the professional review comps from comparables from the realtor so that you know what those homes are selling for. Because in the heat of those markets, and as I said, right now we're just hoping that things stabilize a little bit because we don't, as mortgage professionals and realtors, we don't really have much to gain if property prices continue to rise at a certain level. I mean, it's good if you own a home, but we want transactions. We want people to come to the table. If a home price is going up at that price point, you're pricing people out. Your clientele is leaving. They're walking out the door. So we want home prices to be level. We want rates to come back down. We want to have a normal market where we can actually do business.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, right? Because even in those situations, it felt like the Wild West sometimes, where a street would be, I don't know, for hypothetically 1.1. Then let's say you missed out on an offer bid. Now that street's 1.2 2 weeks later, and it's like it's not sustainable, and it wasn't healthy for anybody, right? And so I think you had it right. Like if we can somehow get to, which I think it's headed towards that, if things kind of if this momentum keeps going and things kind of head in the direction which I think they're going to head in, where maybe it drops 0.25% and people are a little bit more enticed to be back in the market. That right where the transactions are happening, but I think most of it, like in November, December, what we alluded to is that people just got spooked, right? Like interest just shot up so quickly, where a lot of people were up for renewals, and everyone's trying to see what life is like now with the new economy, with their new budgets, with their new.
So now, are they selling? Right? Are people selling now and not buying? They're just going straight to rent straight to lease.
I haven't seen too much of that lately or yet, but you do hear rumblings, right, where you're seeing some power of sales here and there popping up. Where I remember when 5 years ago someone would ask me, "Oh, Ed, find me a power of sale." I'd laugh. I'd be like, "Power of sale? What are you nuts?" Like everyone wants a power of sale.
Yeah.
Now you're seeing them again, right, where it's unfortunate, but reality of that comes with.
I think a lot of that came through, like as I said, we've had this conversation multiple times. We're not seeing that many, power of sales in the conventional banking model, like your top 5 top 6 banks right now with, well, top 5, I guess now with HSBC potentially being gobbled up by RBC. But it's the private space and, you know, this equity space where people saw their interest rates shoot up. Like, I remember a time when we were doing deals on the equity side, you know, rates were like 6%, 7%. Like, that was normal. Then they went down to like 3%. Like, you know what I mean? Like, equity deals. Like, when everybody else was like 2, 1, 1.5. Equity, like little messed up deals, you know, like in the sense of credit or income. They were at low rates. Okay. Now privates, we get a lot of them. Like, we don't do a lot of privates. Like, and I tip my hat as a fact that I don't like private deals because clients have no idea what they're getting in. You're getting someone at their most vulnerable situation, and you're just trying to capitalize on it so that they can close. Now, with that being said, power sales are happening because not only can people not afford it, but there's some private lenders out there that just won't renew them. Like, they're just saying, no. You bought that house with 20% down, and now there's, you know, 90% loan to value. We're not renewing you, or we're not taking that risk. And that's a big problem that came from that era, because we had clients that were coming to us, and back down to your ethical question, and same thing with us is, Ant, I just want to buy a house. Can we do a private mortgage? And I'm like, what in the hell are you talking about? Like, why? Like, I'm like, oh, I need to get into the market. And I'm like, not like this, you don't. Like, this is just not an opportunity for you to, like you said, like, client's going to come back to you and say, what the heck did you do to me?
Yeah, even though it was their choice, they'll be like, why'd you let me do that, right? Like, yeah, and you hear it. That's honestly, if I don't have many fears, but that literally always plays in the back of my mind, whereas I would dread that. Knowing, like, even though you advise the client in the right way, but still, like, some.
Listen, people do, like, there's, like, you can't buy common sense sometimes. It's like some people want something so bad that they're willing to do anything to get it. And that brings us back down to the fraud question. Like, people were trying to commit all kinds of atrocities to try to get into the real estate market. And the best part is those people that didn't get into the market then, right? And now, yeah, maybe interest rates are a little bit higher, but now that they have the opportunity, I always say to the clients, like, think about it this way. Eduardo, tell me if I'm wrong here. During the FOMO era, where everyone's trying to buy a house, you know, it's like prices are going like up and up and up and up, and transactions are going up and up and up and up. And now it's like home prices are down a little bit, interest rates are up a little bit, and nobody's transacting. It's like, wouldn't this be the opportunity? Like, what is that saying by Warren Buffett when there's
this is the dip. This is the dip that everybody wanted, right? And now it's like, the dip is here.
Okay, question. With the dip, do you think if this is the opportunity right now, you think people are going to look back in 2025 and say,
I should have bought? Yeah. 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%.
I love your conviction on that.
You're on the record for that. Definitely.
But I'll stand by it.
You should have bought in 2024.
I think the people that are going to look at 2024 like the people that said I should have bought in 2020 or 20, you know, like right before, like when the whole thing went down.
Well, hold on. Why are you saying people should buy in 2024? What is your main caveat to it?
And go.
If interest rates come down, right, and when and if they do, the issue has always been inventory. That hasn't been resolved. We're adding to the population. People are coming with money.
Mm-hmm.
Once interest rates come down, that inventory issue is still going to be prevalent and it's still going to exist. And then it's going to come down to supply and demand like it has been for the last 10 years. Right?
I can't agree with you more. I think like people discount the simplest economic indicator, supply and demand. And I can tell you anecdotally from our small brokerage in the middle of Vaughan, we have a shift in clientele, like you mentioned, UTCan individuals, and I keep on saying this and I will repeat it and I will go on the record, they don't come to Canada without money and careers. Unlike my grandparents who came to this country or parents that came to this country, you know, maybe with not even 2 pennies to rub together, these people are coming with education, they're coming with skills, and they're coming with money. They're just waiting on either the opportunity or their permanent residency status. They're waiting for a reason to buy their home, and they will buy. There's no doubt in my mind. They're just ready to go. They're just waiting for maybe some things to settle down. And when that floodgate opens, that's going to be the $1 million. And what will cause that floodgate to open? Will it be interest rates? Will it be potentially home prices going up? Potentially home prices coming down in conjunction with lower rates? Like, hey, that's a possibility too. Like, I mean, I think our BMO or RBC was talking about that, because we have a situation right now. The household debt is incredibly high. Like, most Canadians can't even. Most Canadians are super over leveraged.
Are they working on debt only? Is that how they're paying for stuff and basically running their life?
Yes, I think
A lot of people do.
I have a lot of clients, like, thank God for the clients that we were able to help. And this is something we've done with the banks that allow them to, obviously as of November, there's been some regulatory changes when it comes to home equity lines of credits and these readvanceable mortgages. But for clients that were putting down money, we would always say, look, let's work with a lender. Like, maybe the rate's the same, maybe it's a little bit higher, but let's get you a line of credit. Ant, I don't need a line of credit. I'm like, I know you don't need a line of credit now. And maybe it's their demise, or maybe it's their own. It's a blessing in disguise. But some clients calling me back saying, Ant, thank God we got that line of credit. My wife went on maternity leave, or something's changed drastically in our household, and this line of credit has helped us to keep the roof over our head. Now, the flip side is some people are leveraging just their line of credit to make their mortgage payment. And, I can look at both sides of this equation. I can say, yeah, that's artificially maybe propping up the housing market, because we're not seeing all these inventory homes hit the market. Could be a lot to do with the stress test. Maybe, people were qualified a little bit higher. Now we're seeing those rates play out. But I really, really think that people are leveraged, because not only because of their mortgage payments, not only because of it, but just the cost. And I will always say this, and I'll go on the right, because the government printed way too much freaking money. They caused this situation to happen. And before I end this and throw this off to you, Eduardo, I'm gonna say this. When you look at the government, what they've done, the government came out in 2020. They said, spend your money, go blow your brains out on debt, because we're going to keep things low. People aren't stupid. People are that was like, when in history have you ever had a central bank come out and say, go blow your brains out on mortgage debt, and we're going to be there to support you, and then turn around and say, oh boy, we effed up. Now we have the inflation. So everything went up. Cost of living went up. Government's printing money. Here's a check. Here's money for you. Here's money for you. What the heck is going on here?
That's the thing. Society was so vulnerable. Like, I remember, like, my wife would sit religiously by the TV remember when Trudeau would make those announcements.
Like Mr. Dress Up at 11 o'clock?
Yeah. We shut everything down. Oh my God, Mr. Trudeau's going to talk. Right?
Or Doug Ford.
Or Ford, right? And I remember him, like, people got some serious comfort from hearing things like that, right? And I would, like I was saying, back in 2020, half of the world was terrified that it was going to end, and the other half of the GTA was going nuts, buying properties, scooping up all the deals. I remember from April to freaking August was bananas.
Yeah,
like, my phone didn't stop ringing. I was all the time. And I'm like,
it's nuts.
I was out and about, and I'm like, and then I'd sit and watch TV. I'm like, but the rest of the world is freaking.
Okay, so but look now. When is the next interest rate hike?
The 24th is the next
January,
announcement.
Yeah.
You know that
You said
day,
hike. I don't think it's going to be a hike.
not hike.
It's going to be a pause.
We got used to saying that.
I'm used to. So it's going to be maybe, hopefully.
The Bank of Canada is going to take a hike. The Bank of Canada is going to take a hike.
Okay, so that's coming out in January, right?
Yeah, January 24th.
So 2 more weeks. Okay. Now, everyone is going to be glued that day.
Yeah.
And everyone is going to be posting that day.
It,
Right?
Yeah.
Is it not the same thing as Trudeau and Doug Ford? Now, all of a sudden, we're looking at the bank for that glimmer of hope. So we're all glued to it.
Yeah.
What are we going to do? Are we going to continuously watch them? Yes.
Exactly. But it's true. And I don't ever remember a time where, like, every announcement of the Bank of Canada was
So important.
Televised.
prime time.
Prime time.
Everyone's waiting for 10 a.m. Going, oh, like, I'm guilty of it too. I'm there.
All realtors do it.
refreshing.
Realtors do. What do you think mortgage brokers do?
Brokers do it. We all do it because we all want to be in the know.
Yeah.
And
And it's
essentially,
the
this is
first
your
to
career.
post. It's like the first.
You're
to
breaking news. It's like the sports writers,
Breaking
right? You
news.
want to break the trade first, right?
Of course. So now, but I have to jump in and say this. But you also have two beautiful daughters that play soccer. You yourself play soccer. I know that you and your wife, you guys all do these events, right?
Mm-hmm.
How in the world do you deal with all that, plus a realtor, plus the stress of the world, plus?
That's the escape, though, man. Like, honestly, like, that's the time where I'm sitting back, really being present, and I really try to force myself to be self-aware enough to be present in those moments. Like, my biggest fear, especially when I got into the business, is I didn't want to be like those guys who are at their kids' game and they're like, yeah. And they're like, Dad, did you see that? I'm like, oh, shit, I missed it. Because when it's family time, it's family time. And it's not that you don't prioritize everything else. No, you do. It's just you schedule everything, right? And everything has its time. Everything has its time and place for that, right? And if it's an hour a week, 2 hours a week that I dedicate specifically to that, like, I don't think that's detrimental to your business.
Actually, it makes your business probably better because you're able to focus and disconnect for that 2 hours or whatever it is that you do per day.
I think it's difficult, guys. We're saying it because we're not in front of it. I mean, I'm a big proponent of I'd like to spend family time, but if something urgent comes, you simply can't just say it's family time. No, you can't.
But you pick and choose. Like, honestly, don't get me wrong. When I started, I was bad. Mm-hmm. Like, I have to admit I was terrible. We'd be at dinner and I'd be like, because I'm just getting started. I'm like, if I don't go, they're gonna call somebody else. I'd be in the middle of dinner and be like, sorry, babe, I gotta go do this. You want to go see the place now? Sure, no problem. Right away, book the appointment. Babe, see you later. I'll be back tonight. But what was happening was that I was so scrambly, and it got to a point where I wasn't really fully present anywhere because I'd be doing the showing, focusing on that, and then back of my head I'd be like, fuck, I'm missing my kid's game.
Absolutely.
Shit. I'm missing the birthday party.
So how do you do it? How do you do it, boys?
We were saying, I mean, when we were going crazy, and especially like in 2020, late 2020, 2021, it was like my wife was like basically emailing me. She's like, hey, that's the only way you're gonna, like.
But what can you do though? Now's the time to make money.
Like
you know what I mean?
like all of us here in this room right now talking, we're all self-employed.
Yes.
Right? This is the one thing that I learned is every morning I wake up unemployed. Until I have a deal or I'm working on something, I'm not employed. So this is the life we chose, right? This is the way I look at it. Like you have to take that into consideration. Now you have to also block off time and go away and completely, turn off your phone or delegate, say, look, this is the case because it's for your sanity. And I'm telling you, it's for your, like 2021, like it was a great year. Everyone, if you didn't do well in 2021, you should give your, like, you know what I mean?
Do something else, man.
Yeah, go do something else because it was a fantastic year, but it takes a toll on your relationship. It takes a toll on your health. It takes a toll on everything.
But that's where it helps you be more effective. At least I found, right? Once, again, it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of like figuring out, a lot of like being honest, like a lot of like arguments where it's like, I'm doing this for us, right? Mm-hmm. But then you have to really, again, be self-aware enough to be like, understand what it's doing to everyone around you and whether or not are you being as effective as you can be. And I feel like if you allot some time to that and prioritize and be there. Like when you're there, be there. So when you are focusing on your business, you're energetic, you're motivated. You wake up knowing your why. Why am I working so hard for that? Mm-hmm. Right? And I mean, like to your testament, I just want to shout out Uncle Freddie because one of my mentors, my wife's uncle, he would always tell me like to that point, he's like, you're only as good in sales. You're only as good as your last month. You might have made $100 million last month, but guess what? Hey, today you're at zero. And it's like, again, that's where I like people who want to get into the industry. I'm like, it's not for everybody, man. You have to really charge your own batteries.
You got to look long term. Yeah. A lot of people are looking for that quick fix, that quick dollar, and then what? You do great January, and then you get murdered February, March, April. So then, what have you really made? Yeah. All the money, all the profit that you made in January is gone. So that's why I think the biggest struggle we all have, especially entrepreneurs, is prioritizing time. Maybe we should allocate it to certain things more often than not. But if you know that if you work, you're going to bring in money. If you don't work, you don't bring in money. How are you going to do it?
Time is the biggest commodity that we can't afford to lose. Like, I mean,
Nor do we have control over.
And nor do we, exactly. We don't have control over time. And this is what, when people are looking through the lens of the camera and they're looking at, you know, people that are successful, right? I always say, what do they do? Like, what's their story, right? Like, why are they successful? It just didn't happen overnight. Like, it's putting that time in. Nobody realizes the sacrifices, the tears, the blood, sweat, and tears that you put in to getting to this point. The amount of years that you went without eating or that you struggled, and it was like, I don't know if I'm going to make the mortgage payment next month. People don't look at it that way. They just see now
the shininess.
Right? They see the top of the iceberg, but they don't see underneath it. And that's, I think, as I said, it's a fierce industry, guys. As I said, like, people can say what they want about anybody in the industry, whether you're a realtor, mortgage broker, whatever the case is. It's a fierce industry. It's a very competitive marketplace. And what differentiates people from others, right? It's literally comes down to what you said. It's knowing who you're dealing with. I like Eduardo. I like Stefano. I like working with Anthony. What is the value proposition that you're getting with them? Like, trust me, I'm telling clients sometimes, like, you can go out there and they're like, yeah, but I get nothing. It's like, literally, it's like just a rotation. Oh yeah, that rate might be slightly better, but they don't answer my questions. I don't know what the heck's going on. These are the sentiments I get from people. I'm like, was it worth it? They're like, absolutely not. It's absolutely not worth it, because the amount of questions, pressure, all the things that are mounting up in these people's,
of course,
especially as a first-time home buyer. Imagine
it's a huge deal.
It is. It's massive.
So I'll tell you what. You guys can't control the time, but I can. We've hit our 52nd minute of this episode. So now comes the most important part of the information that we need to tell people, and that's where we can find you. Eduardo Ramon, the floor is yours.
So you can find me, Eduardo Ramon Sagastu. Had to do it. At www.ramonrealty.ca or on Instagram and TikTok at Ramon Realty. That's RAMON Realty, REALTY.
Make sure to give them a follow. And for us, obviously, you know where you can find us on all your social media outlets. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, obviously our podcast, and Instagram at In Touch Mortgages, _Venuto if you want to follow me personally. And obviously, give us a call if you have any questions. Make sure to follow Eduardo, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Take care, everyone.